Who are winners and losers from SEC Week 11? Bama's back, horns are hooking, and is Georgia in trouble? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And a reminder, you can start the season with a big return over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, as we do each and every week, we give you our losers and winners of the week. Like to start on a positive note, so let's go ahead and get started with our winners of the weekend in SEC Week 11. And we got to start over in Oxford as Lane Kiffin, my goodness, what a win for him. Biggest resume win of Lane Kiffin's coaching career as Ole Miss upset Georgia in Oxford 28-10, and the Rebels improved to 8-2 on the season. Defense was flying everywhere. Jackson Dart ended up leaving the game in the first quarter with an ankle injury. He threw an interception on the first drive. Freshman quarterback Austin Simmons came in. He led them on a scoring drive. But Dart returned to the field, played with a hobble, and the Rebels ended up beating Georgia down on both lines of scrimmage. Ole Miss held Georgia to 59 rushing yards. They sacked Carson Beck 5 times. Lane Kiffin saying after the game, a lot of really good things have happened here, but there had not been a signature game like this. That's the team Georgia at the playoff goes through almost every year. And to win it the way we did, a 3-score game doesn't happen with Georgia very often. By the way, Ole Miss, they had never beaten a team ranked this high at home. Georgia, number 3 in the country. And what's so impressive, I mean, they did it without Henry Parrish, their leading rusher. They did it without Trey Harris, one of the best receivers in the country. It was a rainy, wet field. And their highest AP-ranked win at home in school history. Second fewest points allowed by an AP top 2 team all time. Paul Feinbaum saying over the weekend, he said, look, the narrative just got stuck to Lane. Fair or not fair. You can never say that again. That was the biggest win of Lane Kiffin's career. And I'm really happy for him because he's a guy that we pay attention to at the heart of the matter. He's an elite football coach, and he proved that on Saturday. Shout out to Ole Miss. Shout out to Lane Kiffin. I told you guys on Friday, I said, look, one of those 2 upsets was going to happen, with Ole Miss being a home underdog to Georgia and LSU being a home underdog to Alabama. Well, we'll get to that game in a little bit, but I said one of those upsets was going to happen, definitely, and Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss proved it. Shout out to them. And next up, they will be at Florida on November 23rd, and Ole Miss, I mean, everybody's looking at what's remaining for them and saying they got a great chance to win this thing out with a bye week this week, then at Florida, and then home for Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. They should win both those games. Should. See what happens with the DJ Lagway situation in the Florida game. Obviously, he makes them much better. But big win for Lane, and Lane is our biggest winner of the week this week in the SEC. Another winner of the weekend, how about Jalen Milroe? A Saturday night in Death Valley at LSU and an Alabama team that already had 2 losses on the season, and Jalen Milroe rose to the occasion. 12 rushes in this one, 185 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. He also threw for 109 yards, but a career high in rushing yards for Milroe as Alabama rolled LSU in Baton Rouge 42-13. And he did this last year against LSU in Tuscaloosa. Now, everybody blamed that on Matt House, their former defensive coordinator. This was Blake Baker. Both DCs just stink. Second Alabama player with multiple career 4 rushing touchdown games, Sean Alexander, the last one to do it. But Milroe's 4th touchdown was his longest run of the night, 72 yards, right through the heart of the LSU defense. Kalen DeBoer saying after the game, I felt like this was the most complete game that we played, coming into a tough environment and just staying the course, play after play. On Milroe, DeBoer said he's got a superpower when it comes to running the football. He does. I mean, it looked like when he took off running, he just put it in another gear. and LSU looked slow. Tigers just absolutely dominated LSU. They had Tiger fans heading to the exits at the end of the third quarter. Now, it was rainy. I was there. But the score was 28-6 after 3. Alabama outgained LSU 420 yards to 343, and a lot of those LSU yards came in mop-up time. But Bama dominated time and possession to 33-55, and Bama's won 12 of its last 14 games against LSU. Look, this has always been one of those fun matchups because LSU seems to always play Bama tough, but this was, one of the most lopsided in recent years. And now a great chance for the Tide to win out and make a case for a playoff spot. They host Mercer, then it's at Oklahoma, and then home for Auburn. The Tide probably going to the playoff. If they finish 10-2, I think it's all but decided they'll be in there. Another winner of the weekend. How about Drew Pine at Missouri? Look, when it sounded like Brady Cook wasn't going to go, I just didn't have much faith in Drew Pine. Last time we saw him, he was throwing 3 interceptions against Alabama. But Pine responded late in this one against Oklahoma, throwing 3 touchdown passes. Trailing with 2 minutes to go, Pine hit Theo Weiss for the game-tying touchdown. Now, a Zion Young 17-yard fumble return for a touchdown with 22 seconds left would give Mizzou the 30-23 lead for good, and they would go on to win it. But Luther Burden coming up with some big catches. Theo Weiss with 70 yards, Burden with 55. But a big tip of the cap to Drew Pine, man. Taking care of the football and getting a big, big win for Mizzou. People were down on Mizzou coming off of that last shutout loss at Alabama. But the Tigers now improved to 7-2 overall. Remaining schedule, they were at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, home for Arkansas. Still a chance to run the table. Eli Drickowitz threw it out there after the game. Said playoffs still alive. Again, if Mizzou runs the table, I think you need to put them in the discussion. Now, if we get into debating, resume wins and all that, are there other teams with better wins on their resume? We can get into that debate. But, man, give Drew Pine a lot of credit. After playing absolutely awful last game, he was really, really good in this one. A lot of credit. All right, how about over at Tennessee, another win of the weekend, Dylan Sampson. Career highs for rushes and rushing yards. 30 carries, 149 yards, and a touchdown. Continues to be the SEC's leading rusher with over 1,100 rushing yards. No other SEC running back is over 1,000 yards rushing. He became the centerpiece of the Vols offense in the second half after Nico Iamaleava left the game with an upper body injury. The Vols play an important game this weekend with playoff implications at Georgia. After that, they're home for UTEP and then at Vandy to finish this one out. They sit at 8-1 overall, very strong, but a big reason why has been that offensive line protecting and blocking, and Dylan Sampson helping open up running lanes and holes for him. He has been outstanding, one of the best backs in the country, let alone in the SEC. So, Dylan Sampson, winner of the week. How about over in Austin? Quinn Ewers. Going up against Florida, 19 of 27, 333 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, no picks, as Texas beat Florida 49-17. A near flawless game for Quinn Ewers. The 5 touchdown passes were a career high for him, one shy of a school record. Coach Steve Sarkisian said the Longhorns, they had been struggling to find their rhythm in offense, but they dialed up big play after big play. They had 12 plays of more than 20 yards against the Gators. Wide receiver Isaiah Bond was back in the lineup after missing some time with an ankle injury. And Ewers' day could have been even bigger. They had some deep throws that were dropped by receivers. But Steve Sarkisian saying, we want people to feel our speed. We want people to fear our speed. And Texas, after allowing 11 sacks in their previous 2 games, that offensive line protected Ewers for most of the day. Obviously, they want to avoid hits on him. He did miss time with that abdomen strain. But next up for Texas, they're at Arkansas, they're home versus Kentucky, and then they were at Texas A&M for that monster game against the Aggies in College Station. But shout out Quinn Ewers. He was really, really good in this one. And our last winner of the weekend, I got Rocket Sanders and Lenora Sellers in here for South Carolina. Lenora Sellers, 2 passing touchdowns at Vandy. Rocket Sanders, 126 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 52 yards receiving, including a pass-catching touchdown as well. 178 from scrimmage as Carolina beat Vandy 28-7 in Nashville. Shane Beamer saying after the game, everyone thought there would be a letdown coming off of our big win last week over A&M. For our guys to come in here and know it's going to be a tough, gritty, hard game just because of the way Vanderbilt plays football, really satisfying for us. And Vanderbilt, they were back into the top 25 this past week in the rankings. South Carolina was not. Shane Beamer said voters that don't think the Gamecocks are worthy of being ranked, he said, keep crapping on us. That's the way we like it as well. Don't rank us this week. We're good where we are. Gamecocks now 6-3 overall, 4-3 in the conference. They won their third SEC road game for the first time since 2011. And one little nugget here. We'll get into the LSU live mascot a little bit later, but the Gamecocks or the Commodores will not allow Sir Big Spur, the Gamecock, into the stadium in Nashville, according to Shane Beamer. Said First Bank Stadium undergoing renovation, and they have a rule that they do not allow live mascots into their stadium. Shane Beamer said that's what makes this league special. In fact, LSU can have a freaking tiger at their stadium tonight, but we can't bring Sir Big Spur. Carolina's remaining games, they are versus Mizzou, versus Wofford, and at Clemson. So big one this weekend against Mizzou. If they can win this one, they'll beat Wofford, and then we'll see what they do against Clemson to finish off the season. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Those are our winners of the weekend. Coming up next, we'll get to our losers. That's coming your way here in just a second. But first, to remind you guys, today's episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, get ready to tackle the college action, the NFL action, all with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's over there at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Of course, we love to tell you all the great college games up there as well. Biggest games in the SEC, all right there for you at FanDuel.com. Roll along here, Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Thank you guys for checking us out each and every day. All right, we did our winners of the weekend. Now it is time to get to our losers of the weekend. Who depressed us? Who disappointed this week? And first and foremost, we got to point the finger at none other than the game we were at in person. Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly, you had 2 weeks to prepare for Jalen Milroe in Alabama. You came off your bye week. You had 2 weeks to fix your offensive issues. Remember, Nussmeier played poorly in that second half against A&M. Ended up losing that one. Well, 2 more interceptions in this game for Garrett Nussmeier versus Alabama. And LSU suffers their first loss in a night game at home under Brian Kelly. And look, it's not like you lost this one 23-20, right? Like, you know, losing by a field goal at home to Bama, you could stomach that one. But losing 42-13? 13, and you needed like the final seconds to score your lone touchdown of the game? Sloppy. Sloppy from all around, from Blake Baker and the defensive scheme to try to bring down Jalen Milroe running the football. I mean, how do you give that up after what he did to you a year ago? Did you not rewatch the film from Tuscaloosa last year, 2023? Unbelievable. And Joe Sloan, offensive coordinator, not a great night for you. And it's not like they didn't run the football effectively. They actually had some decent runs with Caden Durham. The problem with LSU, could not sustain drives. They complete passes, you get pressured. Got to learn to deal with that. LSU, they have now lost 2 straight games following a 6-game win streak. And that came after their home opening loss to USC. Or rather, in Las Vegas. But this time, Milroe, he did it against the LSU defense, like we said, coming off of a bye. And remember, just 2 weeks ago, they were gashed by Marcel Reed when A&M made the change to their running quarterback. Brian Kelly said after the game, if you're watching this game, you're like, what did these guys do for 2 weeks? We had a scheme to stop the quarterback. We got to get it fixed, certainly, because it's been a couple weeks now and 2 games. And all but now, LSU is basically eliminated from the college football playoff. One other story, shortly before kickoff, the Louisiana governor, Jeff Landry, paraded a caged Bengal tiger onto the field. The Bengal tiger is named Omar Bradley. They borrowed from the state of Florida because their live mascot that's on campus, Mike the Tiger, they can't bring him out. According to the vet and doctors or whatever, they're like, yeah, it's going to scare him. He doesn't want to go out there. So they rented a tiger basically from another state, and it was criticized by a lot of folks, and it was really weird. Being there in the stadium, witnessing it live, I was right there standing next to the cage, and it was weird. Like, there were some fans cheering, but a lot of people were like, why is this happening? This isn't even our mascot. This is just a tiger you've rented from another state. I have expected Carol Baskin or Joe Exotic to roll out there with this fake tiger named Omar in a cage. But nonetheless, I guess Omar will never be invited back to Tiger Stadium after LSU got beat down that badly. But look, Nussmeier, they got a lot to clean up. LSU season has fallen apart since the second half of that A&M game, and you look at what LSU has left on the schedule. They got to go to Florida this weekend. Not a gimme if DJ Lagway is back. Home versus Vandy. Again, Vandy's just had their tough letdown, but Diego Pavias had a great year, and then they're home versus Oklahoma. I mean, I guess it would be a strong finish if LSU can win out and go 9-3. Those would be 3 nice wins to finish strong. But 9-3, what does it get you? An Outback Bowl appearance? Very disappointing for the LSU faithful. A lot of people looking at Brian Kelly going, this is year 3 now, bro. Like, Kalen DeBoer just beat you that badly, and he's in year 1 after all the pieces Alabama lost this offseason. So the question becomes, what does next year look like for Brian Kelly? Now, bringing in the number 1 recruit, number 1 quarterback, Bryce Underwood, the question is, will Nussmeier come back? I almost wonder, look at how he performed these last couple games. Makes that decision a little bit easy. I don't know if NFL teams are running to go draft Garrett Nussmeier. I almost think he has to come back for another year, so we shall see. But nonetheless, LSU's playoff hopes basically out the window now. Another loser of the weekend. How about Carson Beck at Georgia? What in the world has happened to that Georgia offense? Ole Miss held them to 59 net rushing yards on 33 carries. And Carson Beck in this one, no touchdowns, an interception, two fumbles, lost one of those, sacked 5 times. It was the highest pressure rate Carson Beck has faced in his career. He was pressured on 40% of his dropbacks. Kirby Smart saying after the game, I thought Carson played good, guys. I mean, some of those penalties, they're not on him. Some are. He had a couple snafus, too. Maybe he didn't motion a guy or didn't shift somebody. I thought he threw the ball away a couple times. It was really good. I'm not here to be critical of him. Well, Kirby, your offense scored 10 points on the night. A lot of Mike Bobo tweets I saw from Georgia fans on social media. And Kentucky held Georgia to just 13 earlier this season. I had to go back and look. I'm like, when's the last time Georgia only scored 10 points in a game? You got to go back to the start of the 2021 season. Remember that Clemson game? They won that one 10-3. But this is Georgia's first season with 2 losses since 2020. And Georgia now hosts number 7 Tennessee this coming Saturday. Monster game for Kirby Smart and company. They have to win out now. They have to win this one. Another loser of the weekend. I put Brent Venables in here. Look, hindsight is 2020, but he chose not to play for overtime with 1 minute to go in a game tied at 23 in their own territory. They're thinking, let's throw it. Let's try to get down the field. Maybe try to get a game-winning field goal. Jackson Arnold gets hit, loses the football. Zion Young returns it for a scoop and score, and that was all she wrote. And for Oklahoma, after a 4-1 start to the year, OU has now lost 4 of their last 5. They fall to just 1-5 in the SEC. Remember, this is year 1 in the conference. And their last 2 games, after this bye week, they host Alabama, and then they finish on the road at LSU. To me, this was a game that Oklahoma really had a chance to try to put away and win. and they just couldn't do it. So, Brent Venables, Oklahoma, the rough, I don't know if I want to call it a nightmare season, but really rough season in a welcome to the SEC year. Really, really rough start. Another loser of the weekend. I hate to do this. I feel bad. He's a third-string quarterback, but Aiden Warner, all week Florida said DJ Lagway wanted to play against Texas, but ultimately Billy Napier, they decided to hold him out, and they went with the third-string guy, the Yale transfer, Aiden Warner, and it was bad. He was 12 of 25, 132 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, -7 rushing yards. He just had no chance in this one. Florida fell in Austin 49-17. Billy Napier said after the game, yeah, it got out of hand in the first half. You looked up and the game was over. Aiden fought his tail out there today. You go into the game understanding that you're playing with your third quarterback, and you know you have to defend him, and we did not do that. And now Florida drops to 4-5 overall, 2-4 in the SEC. Florida's remaining 3 opponents. They're versus LSU this weekend, versus Ole Miss a week later, then they're at FSU. If they can get Lagway back, then they have a chance at a few more wins. But look, if they got to run Warner out there again, I don't think they win another game that they put him out there in. Another loser of the weekend. I hate to do this, man, because he's been a winner almost every week. Diego Pavia. The Pavia Magic ran out in this one on Saturday as Vanderbilt fell to South Carolina 28-7. Diego Pavia, only 1 touchdown drive on the night for Vandy as he went 16 of 31, 166 yards through the air, 65 rush yards. Vandy was 6 of 13 on third downs, 0 for 2 on fourth downs, just 274 total yards of offense. And Vandy drops to 6-4 on the year with the loss to Carolina. They get a bye this week, then they're at LSU and home versus Tennessee. Good news is they're already bowl eligible. They got 6 wins. But this was the first time maybe all season that we saw Diego Pavia kind of grounded and not, special like he's been for so much of the year. This was also Vandy's most lopsided loss of the year, right? I mean, other losses you could have said, man, they were close by 1 score or here or there. But this one was just pretty ugly. A few more here, loser of the weekend. I put Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State. Look, I sang his praises in recent weeks, even in losses. I thought he played his butt off, but, man, Tennessee got after him. He was 10 of 26 for just 92 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. He was sacked 4 times. Mississippi State lost 33-14 at Tennessee. Jeff Lebby's crew, they are now 2-8 on the season, 0-6 in the SEC. They get a bye this week. Then it's home versus Mizzou and at Ole Miss for the Egg Bowl. Hard not to envision them going 2-10 on the season at this point. And then one more threw in here. Nico Iamaleava, look, he can't do anything about an injury, but an upper body injury. Gaston Moore came in to finish the game for him. Josh Heupel said he should be ready to go for this weekend versus Georgia. So certainly something worth tracking throughout this week. We're going to monitor that. And for Tennessee to win this one against Georgia, they're going to need a healthy Nico Iamaleava to pull it off. All right, still more to come here on the Locked On Podcast Network, or Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We'll give you the latest polls coming up here in a second. Well, first, today's episode presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app. And look, Game Time, they've got that new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to your favorite, see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks is going to filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The Game Time Picks, they use the curation process, makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is you're looking for. The all-in pricing feature, that's the one that I like, shows you your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. They got the seat views. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That will get you $20 off your first purchase. If you've never used them before, terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, rolling along here to Locked On SEC, and before we call it a show, they want to get to the AP poll coming out Sunday afternoon, and here are your latest standings, or rather not standings, but rankings as we look at it in Week 12 of the AP poll, and they have got Oregon sitting up there. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Texas Longhorns from the SEC sitting at 3rd. So they moved up 2 spots. Penn State 4th, Indiana 5th. Tennessee moves up a spot to 6th. BYU 7th, Notre Dame 8th. Alabama moves up a couple spots to 9th. Ole Miss moves up 6 spots to 10th. Georgia drops 9 spots all the way to number 11 in the AP poll. Other SEC teams, Texas A&M, they sat idle. They sit at 15. And then coming in the back end, LSU drops to 21. So they drop 7 spots after their crushing home defeat at the hands of Alabama. So LSU 21. South Carolina, they jump into the rankings at number 23. Mizzou, still ranked. Or they get ranked, I guess, with the win over OU. They're 24. Now, in the coaches poll, a little bit different. They got Texas 3 is the same. They had Tennessee 4 in the coaches poll. So Tennessee 2 spots higher there. Alabama was also 9th in the coaches. Georgia was 10th. Ole Miss 11th in the coaches poll. That's kind of funny because it's like Ole Miss just beat Georgia, yet you're going to put Georgia ahead of them. They had A&M 15th as well. They had LSU 1 spot down at 22. They had Mizzou 21 in the coaches poll. South Carolina 23. So there you have it. Those are the latest SEC teams in the polls. One other note here, College Game Day announced they are heading to Athens this weekend. The big primetime show will be heading to Athens, and this will be the 5th consecutive season College Game Day will make a trip to Georgia. Last time the crew didn't make it to Georgia was 2018. So Game Day was on campus for Georgia's big win over Ole Miss last season. Georgia's 28-23-2 all-time against Tennessee. The Bulldogs have dominated the series in recent years, winning 7 in a row, so that'll be a big one. I did want to give a hat tip to the Game Day crew. They did a phenomenal job in the tribute piece to Kirk Herbstreit's dog, Ben, who passed away. If you didn't see that, really, really emotional piece. And Kirk Herbstreit was so emotional on set he couldn't even speak when they threw it to him regarding the piece. So I encourage you guys to check it out. We got to catch up with Reese Davis on Friday's show. If you missed that, talked with him a number of different topics around the LSU-Alabama game and other things. But we did get his thoughts on the passing of Ben as well. And one other thing I wanted to pass along here, I saw this over the weekend. The SEC championship game, as we know, we have no East or West anymore. And some folks have been writing up some scenarios. I think Seth Emerson did this over at The Athletic. He pointed out 3 teams have only 1 SEC loss, Tennessee, Texas, and Texas A&M. 5 more squads have 2 losses in the conference, and that's Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, and Missouri. Technically, 3 loss squads are not yet eliminated either, and that's South Carolina, Arkansas, and Vandy. But the 8 teams that have 1 or 2 losses are much more likely to be playing in Atlanta on December 9th. So how messy can things get? An 8-way tie for first place is possible, Seth Emerson noted. It would take Georgia defeating Tennessee this weekend, the Texas versus Texas A&M winner dropping a conference game before their clash, and then Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, and Missouri all winning out. So if there's an 8-way tie, keep in mind, first tiebreaker is head-to-head among the tied teams. Then you're going to go to record versus all common conference opponents among the tied teams. And it keeps going on and so forth. So, look, just bring it up. There's a plausible scenario where the SEC has an 8-way tie and, who goes to play in Atlanta for the SEC title game? It will be nuts. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back and check us out throughout this week. We will be getting you caught up and ready to go for all the big games happening in the conference this weekend. And, man, we have got some – last week was a treat. Last week we had some good ones. With this weekend, maybe not the biggest matchups outside of Tennessee, Georgia, but Mizzou, South Carolina is a big game for both of those teams. LSU, Florida, a big game for both those teams, especially if DJ Lagway plays. And then Texas at Arkansas – I keep saying it's a sneaky one. Last time Texas went to Arkansas a couple years ago, Sark versus Pittman, Arkansas won. So we'll see what happens there. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow. Come on back and check us out.